Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty and today I'm participating in a back to school / education YouTube hop hosted by Sara Scraps. And if you're starting here, I will have a link for you of all the crafters so that you can be sure not to miss anybody. And if you're hopping here from a previous crafter, welcome, I'm glad you're here. Let's go ahead and get started with my project. So I'm here with photos of my youngest kid, and she actually attends an alternative school. We kind of homeschool, but mostly she attends this alternative school. And she was really looking forward to being back in person this year, but with the COVID numbers in our area, we've got a 2-week delay. So I did take these pictures on her first day of online school because they did start that way, and we're hoping to be in person soon. So as you can see here on the screen, I have a whole bunch of these electronic cut files that I actually designed and created, and they're available for download, and I will leave you links to that if you enjoy cut files. But I decided to use a whole bunch of these school-themed cut files to create the layout today, and I'm going to be adding in some watercolor here. So I pulled out a sheet of that 12 by 12 Strathmore watercolor paper, and I can leave source links to that for you if you're interested. So this cut file is a book cut file, and I layered it up with a wood grain paper as the book binding, and then layers of vellum on top of some text paper so that it looks book-like in the background without being overwhelmingly text-based so that your eye might want to end up reading that text. So I'm fussing around a little bit with how I want this layout to go. I do tend to fill my photos or fill my layouts up quite a bit, and so I am yet again trying to make sure I can squeeze everything onto this layout. And I come up with this design and I decide I like it, so I'm going to go ahead and adhere everything down to that book piece, and that's going to allow me to just pick it up and move it out of the way for when I get to the watercoloring part. Now I did want to go ahead and trim off the photo edges that were sticking outside of that book, and that just gives it a cleaner finished look that I appreciate. And once that is all done, then I can go ahead and set it aside so that I can work on my watercoloring. I do use it to give myself a mark on here on my watercolor paper so that I don't spend time watercoloring underneath something that's going to be covered up anyway. And then I can go ahead and get started with that. So I have my watercolor palette and my 2-cup water system here, and I'm going to use this spray bottle to wet the entire area of my project, and that's going to give me some more flow to this watercolor. As I drop color onto that wet paper, it's going to start bleeding and spreading for me. So I'm going to set you up with a sped up version and some music, and we can watch the watercoloring happen. While I finish up with this painting, let me just give you a couple of explanations of watercoloring if you're new to this. I did start with a nice wet paper, and that helped my dark blue layer spread and bleed. And then as that started to dry a little bit, I was dropping in other colors on top of that. And you can see the spaces where those new colors came in on top of an almost dry paint, and it kind of burst into color and pushed that darker paint away so that you can see those brighter colors on top. And if I was getting too much puddling action going on, I would soak up puddles with my paintbrush. I rinse out my paintbrush, dry it off on a towel, and then use that dry paintbrush to soak up wet puddles. And that way I could get these bursts of color, and those are called cauliflowers or blooms, and often that is a mistake when people are trying to get a very smooth paint job. But for this technique, I wanted those bright pops of color to feel very magical. So anyway, now that the painting is done, I did set that aside to dry completely, and then I'm moving on to doing some journaling while that dries. And I wrote out my journaling first on this scratch piece of paper to make sure it was going to fit in that space that I had set aside. And since this layer is vellum, it's very convenient to just see through that vellum where my journaling is and copy right over the top of it. And with that journaling done, it just talks about how she wants to go back to school, and the wording does read right into that little back to school embellishment. Once my watercolor paper is dry, it is a little bit warped, so I'm going to use a liquid adhesive to add this piece down on top, and that's going to help get a good connection in between those kind of hills and valleys that happen with the warped watercolor paper. I am going to add a little bit of weight to that and let it dry nicely before I move on. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my title. I'm going to use the same liquid adhesive. One tip is that I will do little dots of adhesive on these tiny fine die cuts, and that scratch piece of paper will catch the excess glue so you're not making a mess everywhere. I should say here that I did not design those letters. That is not part of my die cut. That is actually a Cricut font die cut. So I will leave a link to the name of that font as well as the link to my die cuts that you can download. And to make sure I don't lose that little dot over the I, the tittle, I do use a piece of washi tape to tape it to the word itself so that those pieces don't get separated and lost as I'm working on the layout. With all that done, I'm ready to add some embellishment to this page, and I wanted to add some sparkles for that magical feeling because she is so happy to be back to, or looking forward, I should say, to being back in person at school that it feels pretty magical. She's been missing people a whole lot. And so this silver sparkly star stencil seems like the perfect accompaniment to this layout. I'm going to go ahead and adhere down the rest of my little die cuts that I've got going on. I've got that backpack piece, which is multiple layers, so it's nice and sturdy. I've got, oh, I needed to fill in some more stars there. I didn't want to do too many stars because I didn't want to cover them up with the backpack, but I didn't do quite enough. So I've got my 3 feet distance sign and my little mask that I'm trying to figure out where I like it, but I think I like it dangling off the edge of the backpack the best. And so I will glue that down there. And then I pull out a few more sparkles. I have lots of sequins and then these little mirror pieces that I've had in my stash for quite a while. Those were from Die Cuts with a View, and they're so old that they're probably not on the market anymore. But I thought, what fun to use them on this layout. And so I go ahead, and they are self-adhesive, but I didn't think they would stick too well to that bumpy texture of the watercolor paper, so I did add some more of my own adhesive. And then I literally just sprinkle sequins down on my page, and then I will add purposefully a few extra sequins. There were some stars that I had in this Stampin' Up! Set that were silver stars, so I will purposely place those as well as a few yellow sequins, and then I will go about gluing everything down where it landed, and that will finish up my layout for this time. When I'm done gluing, I do give it a tip and make sure nothing has been forgotten or missed, and then I take a look at all the shine and sparkle and color in the light, and I am happy with how this layout came out. So I will give you a few close-up pictures of this. Do remember that this is a hop so that you can follow all the other crafters on this project and see their inspiration on education or back-to-school ideas in case you need to scrapbook some of those same projects. Thanks for joining me. If you got something helpful out of this video, I would appreciate you giving it a like, and I will be back next week with more scrapbooking videos, so I hope you subscribe and join me then.